This was supposed to be a nightmare, stranded with my perpetually grumpy roommate, the kind of guy who could freeze water with a glance. But as the snow piled up and the cabin grew colder, an even more unsettling chill set in, the dawning realization that the person I hated most might actually be the only one I could depend on. Before we dive into the story, please make sure to subscribe to the channel, like this video, and leave a comment. Chapter 1. Blizzard Warning. The wind howled outside, a hungry beast clawing at the windows of our dorm. Inside, chaos reigned. Students were scrambling, a flurry of panicked energy fueled by the impending blizzard warning. Classes were cancelled, and everyone was trying to get home before the roads became impassable. I, Mitchell, was trying to remain calm, but the knot in my stomach was tightening with every blaring announcement over the campus speakers. "Mitchell, are you seriously still packing? The buses are going to be swamped," Antonio said, his voice a low growl from across the room. He was already bundled in a thick, black parka, his dark hair plastered to his forehead from the frantic rush. "Yeah, well, unlike some people, I actually have to pack before I leave," I retorted, trying to keep my voice light. Antonio had been ready to bolt the second the first snowflake fell. He always seemed to be on edge, a coiled spring ready to snap. We'd been roommates for a semester, and I still hadn't figured him out. He was a walking contradiction, brilliant yet aloof, handsome yet perpetually grumpy. "There's a bus leaving in 10 minutes. If you miss it, you're on your own," he said, already heading for the door. "And you're just going to leave me?" I asked, a hint of disbelief in my voice. He paused, his hand on the doorknob. His jaw clenched, a familiar tick. "I'm not your babysitter, Mitchell." I sighed. "Of course. Fine. I'll be right behind you." We made it to the bus stop just as the first flakes began to fall in earnest. The line was a mob. After an hour of waiting, it became clear that the buses were not going to be able to make it. "Great," I muttered, watching the bus disappear down the road. "Now what?" Antonio just shrugged, his gaze fixed on the swirling snow. "Guess we walk." My heart sank. The walk to his place was at least 2 hours ahead, and the storm was only getting worse. "Are you serious? The wind is already brutal." He finally turned to me, his eyes, usually cold, now held a flicker of something I couldn't quite decipher. "You either walk or freeze here. Your choice, Mitchell." My stomach flipped. And so we started walking. Chapter 2. Stranded. The wind was a relentless force, whipping the snow into a blinding frenzy. Visibility dropped to near zero. The biting cold seeped through my layers, numbing my fingers and toes. Antonio surprisingly seemed unfazed. He walked with a steady, determined pace, his head down, his shoulders hunched against the storm. We trudged on, the silence between us punctuated only by the howling wind and the crunch of our boots in the deepening snow. I tried to keep up, but the exhaustion was starting to set in. "Are you sure this is the right way?" I yelled over the wind. Antonio didn't answer, just kept walking. Then suddenly he stopped. He was staring at something ahead. "What is it?" I asked, hurrying to catch up. He pointed. A car half buried in a snowdrift, its hazard lights blinking weakly. "Looks like someone else had the same idea," he said, his voice barely audible. We approached the car cautiously. The driver was nowhere to be seen. "Maybe they went for help," I suggested, shivering. "Or they're buried under a snowdrift," Antonio said grimly. We continued on, but after another hour, the storm became too much. We were both exhausted, soaked, and freezing. Then, through the swirling white, I saw it. A small, isolated cabin nestled amongst the trees. "There," I shouted, pointing. "Shelter." We stumbled towards it, our bodies screaming in protest. The cabin was old, weathered, and looked abandoned, but it was a sanctuary. We managed to force the door open and collapsed inside, gasping for breath. The cabin was freezing, but at least we were out of the wind. We surveyed our surroundings. A dusty fireplace, a few rickety chairs, a table covered in a thick layer of dust. "Well," I said, trying to sound optimistic, "at least we're dry." Antonio didn't respond. He was already checking the windows, peering out at the raging storm. "No cell service," he announced, his voice flat. "And the roads are completely blocked." The weight of his words settled over me, heavy and suffocating. We were stranded. Alone. Chapter 3. Fire and Fury. The first order of business was to find a way to warm the cabin. The fireplace was our only hope. We spent the next hour gathering firewood, our movements clumsy and awkward. Antonio surprisingly knew how to build a fire. He worked with a focused intensity, his movements precise and efficient. I, on the other hand, struggled, my attempts resulting in more smoke than flame. "Here, let me do it," he finally said, his voice laced with a hint of exasperation. He took over, his hands moving with practiced ease. As the flames began to lick at the wood, a small measure of warmth filled the room. We huddled close, watching the fire, the silence between us less charged now, more subdued. "Thanks," I mumbled, feeling a strange mix of gratitude and annoyance. He just grunted in response. We spent the rest of the afternoon trying to make the cabin habitable. We found some old blankets and a few cans of food in a dusty cupboard. We rationed the food, our arguments over portions and survival strategies becoming increasingly heated. "You're eating too much," I accused, watching him devour a can of beans. "I'm the one who knows how to survive," he retorted, his eyes flashing. "Oh really? Because last time I checked, we're both stuck here," I yelled out in annoyance. The tension between us was a palpable thing, thick in the air. We were trapped, not just by the storm but by our own clashing personalities. Chapter 4. Frozen Frustrations. The night was long and cold. The fire dwindled and the cabin grew colder. We huddled under the blankets, trying to conserve heat. Sleep was fitful, punctuated by the howling wind and the creaking of the old cabin. I woke up to find Antonio staring at the fire, his face illuminated by the flickering flames. He looked different. Vulnerable somehow. I quickly averted my gaze, feeling a strange flutter in my chest. We spent the next day in a similar pattern, gathering firewood, rationing food, arguing. The arguments, however, were starting to feel different. They were less about survival and more about something else. I noticed small things about him. The way he clenched his jaw when he was frustrated, the way his eyes softened when he thought I wasn't looking, the way he unconsciously steadied me when I stumbled on the icy floor. One time, while we were arguing about the best way to melt snow for water, our hands brushed. A jolt, a spark went through me. I quickly pulled away, but the feeling lingered. The isolation was starting to wear on us. The forced proximity was amplifying our differences, but also, strangely, our connection. Chapter 5. Power Outage. The next morning, we woke to a deafening silence. The storm had passed, leaving behind a world of pristine white. The sun, a pale disk in the sky, cast long shadows across the snow-covered landscape. "Finally," I said, stretching. "Maybe we can get out of here today." But as I reached for the light switch, I realized something was wrong. The cabin was plunged into darkness. "The power's out," Antonio said, his voice flat. "Great," I muttered. "Just great." We spent the morning trying to find a way to contact someone, but the phone lines were down and there was no cell service. The isolation was starting to feel suffocating. That afternoon, while I was outside trying to clear a path to the road, I slipped on a patch of ice. I cried out as I fell, my ankle twisting beneath me. Antonio was immediately at my side, his face etched with concern. He helped me back inside, his touch surprisingly gentle. "Are you okay?" he asked, his voice softer than I'd ever heard it. I winced, testing my ankle. "I think I'm okay. Just a sprain maybe." He helped me sit down, his movements careful and deliberate. As he examined my ankle, I noticed a flicker of something in his eyes, a vulnerability, a hint of fear. Chapter 6. Secrets in the Snow. As I sat there, nursing my ankle, Antonio started to talk. He didn't say much at first, just a few mumbled words about the storm, the cabin, the isolation. Then, slowly, hesitantly, he began to open up. He talked about his childhood, about his parents, about the pressure he felt to succeed. He talked about the expectations, the disappointments, the loneliness. He talked about a past heartbreak, a betrayal that had left him guarded and afraid to trust. His voice was raw, filled with a pain I hadn't known existed. I listened, captivated, my own worries fading into the background. I didn't interrupt, didn't offer platitudes. I just listened. When he was finished, the silence hung heavy in the air. I didn't know what to say. I didn't want to say the wrong thing. Finally I said, "I didn't know." He looked at me, his eyes filled with a mixture of vulnerability and defiance. "You don't know anything about me, Mitchell." I wanted to reach out, to touch him, to offer some kind of comfort. But I hesitated, afraid of pushing him away. Instead I said, "I'm sorry, Antonio." He looked away, his jaw clenched. Then, to my surprise, he did something unexpected. He reached out and gently touched my hand. "It's okay," he said, his voice barely a whisper. The storm outside showed no mercy. Snow had piled higher than the windows, and the wind's howl sounded almost alive, like it was mocking our confinement. Inside, the cabin had become a strange mix of warmth, frustration, and tension so thick I could almost taste it. Antonio sat by the fire, arms crossed, scowling at the flickering flames. I tried not to notice how the orange light played across his sharp features. Tried but failed. "Pass me that blanket," I muttered, shivering. He handed it over silently. Our fingers brushed. I jerked my hand back, cheeks heating. He didn't react, but the small pause before he returned to tending the fire was telling. I let out a long breath. "Why do I even keep doing this?" I muttered to myself. "Doing what?" Antonio asked. "Trying to survive with you without killing each other." He snorted quietly, not looking up. "Some things can't be helped." I wanted to argue, but the truth was he was right. Some things couldn't be helped, like the way my stomach twisted whenever he glanced at me. Or the way his presence made me notice the warmth of the fire a little more, the wind a little less. Food rationing became a battleground. Our small stash of canned goods had dwindled to 2 beans, a half-empty bag of trail mix, and a few stale crackers. "You're hoarding it," I accused, holding up the trail mix. "I'm rationing it," he countered, eyes narrowing. "We need it to last." The firelight danced across his tense jaw. "Don't argue with me," he said. The sharpness of his tone cut through me more than the cold ever could. And yet there was an edge of concern underneath it. Later, while trying to clean up spilled snow from our makeshift sleeping area, I tripped over a loose floorboard. "Watch it," Antonio barked. But before I could protest, he was already steadying me, hands firm on my elbows. I froze, heart thudding. "Thanks," I muttered, barely audible. He didn't answer. Just returned to straightening the blankets, a faint scowl masking on his face. Hours passed. Silence stretched, but it wasn't uncomfortable this time. We both busied ourselves with small tasks, stacking firewood, moving furniture to block drafts. The storm outside raged, but inside, the quiet had a rhythm, 2 people surviving together. I caught him looking at me once, really looking. Not glaring, not judging, just observing. My stomach twisted and I quickly looked away. He was impossibly frustrating. And yet I felt a little spark of something I didn't want to name. By the time night fell, the cold had seeped into every corner of the cabin, and we huddled closer than necessary by the fire. "Mitchell?" Antonio began, voice low, hesitant. I looked up. His usual armor of sarcasm and grumpiness was cracked just slightly, just enough to see a sliver of uncertainty. Confused, I moved closer, and his hand brushed mine while adjusting the blanket. I froze, caught in the warmth and the weight of the moment. "It's nothing," he muttered quickly, gaze fixed on the fire. But I knew it wasn't nothing. The snowstorm outside continued to howl, but inside, in that tiny cabin, something else was beginning to thaw. The walls weren't just protecting us from the cold anymore. They were slowly crumbling brick by brick, revealing the first fragile cracks in Antonio's icy exterior. The storm outside showed no mercy. Snow had piled higher than the windows, and the wind's howl sounded almost alive, like it was mocking our confinement. Inside, the cabin had become a strange mix of warmth, frustration, and tension so thick I could almost taste it. Antonio sat by the fire, arms crossed, scowling at the flickering flames. I tried not to notice how the orange light played across his sharp features. Tried but failed. "Pass me that blanket," I muttered, shivering. He handed it over silently. Our fingers brushed. I jerked my hand back, cheeks heating. He didn't react, but the small pause before he returned to tending the fire was telling. I let out a long breath. "Why do I even keep doing this?" I muttered to myself. "Doing what?" Antonio asked. "Trying to survive with you without killing each other." He snorted quietly, not looking up. "Some things can't be helped." I wanted to argue, but the truth was he was right. Some things couldn't be helped, like the way my stomach twisted whenever he glanced at me. Or the way his presence made me notice the warmth of the fire a little more, the wind a little less. Food rationing became a battleground. Our small stash of canned goods had dwindled to 2 beans, a half-empty bag of trail mix, and a few stale crackers. "You're hoarding it," I accused, holding up the trail mix. "I'm rationing it," he countered, eyes narrowing. We need it to last. The firelight danced across his tense jaw. Don't argue with me, he said. The sharpness of his tone cut through me more than the cold ever could. And yet there was an edge of concern underneath it. Later, while trying to clean up spilled snow from our makeshift sleeping area, I tripped over a loose floorboard. Watch it, Antonio barked. But before I could protest, he was already steadying me, hands firm on my elbows. I froze, heart thudding. Thanks, I muttered, barely audible. He didn't answer. Just returned to straightening the blankets, a faint scowl masking on his face. Hours passed. Silence stretched, but it wasn't uncomfortable this time. We both busied ourselves with small tasks, stacking firewood, moving furniture to block drafts. The storm outside raged, but inside, the quiet had a rhythm, two people surviving together. I caught him looking at me once, really looking. Not glaring, not judging, just observing. My stomach twisted and I quickly looked away. He was impossibly frustrating. And yet I felt a little spark of something I didn't want to name. By the time night fell, the cold had seeped into every corner of the cabin, and we huddled closer than necessary by the fire. Mitchell? Antonio began, voice low, hesitant. I looked up. His usual armor of sarcasm and grumpiness was cracked just slightly, just enough to see a sliver of uncertainty. Confused, I moved closer, and his hand brushed mine while adjusting the blanket. I froze, caught in the warmth and the weight of the moment. It's nothing, he muttered quickly, gaze fixed on the fire. But I knew it wasn't nothing. The snowstorm outside continued to howl, but inside, in that tiny cabin, something else was beginning to thaw. The walls weren't just protecting us from the cold anymore, they were slowly crumbling brick by brick, revealing the first fragile cracks in Antonio's icy exterior. Chapter 7, Bonding. The next few days were different. The tension between us hadn't disappeared, but it had shifted. There was a new layer of understanding, a fragile intimacy that had blossomed in the heart of the storm. We spent hours talking, sharing stories, and laughing at our shared survival mishaps. We worked together, side by side, our movements now synchronized, our silences no longer awkward but comfortable. The cold was still a constant companion, but the fire in the fireplace and something else kept us warm. One evening, as we sat huddled together, sharing a can of soup, the conversation turned to our future. What are you going to do when we get back to campus? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. He shrugged, avoiding my gaze. Go back to my routine, I guess. And what about us? I asked, the question hanging in the air. He finally looked at me, his eyes searching mine. The air crackled with unspoken words, with the weight of our shared experience. I don't know, Mitchell, he said, his voice husky. I honestly don't know. The silence stretched, heavy with unspoken realization. The space between us seemed to shrink, the air thick with anticipation. Chapter 8, The Touch. The cabin was freezing, but the fire was burning low. We were huddled close, sharing a blanket, our breaths visible in the cold air. The silence was no longer comfortable but charged, electric. I looked at Antonio and he looked back at me. His eyes, usually guarded, were now open, vulnerable. I could see the questions in them, the uncertainty, the longing. He reached out, his hand trembling slightly, and brushed a stray strand of hair from my face. The touch was light, fleeting, but it sent a jolt through me. Our eyes locked and the world seemed to fade away. The only thing that mattered was the space between us, the unspoken words, the undeniable attraction. He leaned closer and I leaned in too. Our faces were inches apart, our breaths mingling in the cold air. Mitchell? He whispered, his voice a low rumble. I closed my eyes, bracing myself. I didn't know what was going to happen, but I knew I wanted it. Then his lips brushed against mine. It was a soft, tentative touch. My heart leaped in my chest. The kiss deepened and the world exploded. It was tentative at first, soft and questioning, a careful exploration. But as the seconds stretched, the hesitation melted away. His hands moved to my waist, steadying me while mine traced the line of his shoulders. Every lingering touch, every brush of lips, set fire to the cold night, burning away the tension of days spent trapped together. When we finally pulled back, the world was still a blur of snow and wind outside, but inside, the cabin was ours. Warm, intimate, and irrevocably changed. I wasn't expecting this, I admitted, heart still racing. He smirked faintly, eyes dark and serious. Neither was I. Antonio said shyly and smiled at me for the first time since the snow trapped us. I pulled in close to him and rested my head on his shoulder. Chapter 9: The Rescue. The storm finally began to ease in the early morning. A faint light crept through the frost-covered windows, and the relentless howling of the wind softened to a distant whisper. Outside, the world was buried in snow, but the roads had been cleared enough for rescue teams to begin searching. I stayed by the window watching the pale light reflect off the white landscape. My fingers brushed against Antonio's, and he gave a small, almost imperceptible squeeze in return. Neither of us spoke. We both knew what this morning meant: the end of our enforced isolation, the return to a world outside the cabin. When the rescuers arrived, it was chaotic. Snow boots crunched across the cabin floor, voices shouted, and equipment rattled. Antonio moved with his usual precision, helping guide me toward the door and keeping a careful watch on the rescuers as if nothing could go wrong under his supervision. Outside, the blinding white snow stretched in every direction. The rescue team had sleds and ropes ready, but I noticed the subtle hesitation in his movements. He didn't speak, but his grip on my arm lingered longer than necessary, a silent acknowledgement of the bond we'd forged over the past days. As we stepped onto the snow, the cold air stinging our faces, I finally caught his gaze. "You okay?" I asked quietly. "I'm fine," he replied, tone clipped as always, but his eyes betrayed him. Concern, worry, and something softer flickered there just for me. For a moment, neither of us moved. The world beyond the cabin felt impossibly vast after the claustrophobic closeness of the past days, but the connection we'd built was unshakable. When the rescuers urged us onto the sleds, he hesitated. Our shoulders brushed, and he finally spoke, softer than usual. "Mitchell, this isn't over." I raised an eyebrow, my heart skipping a beat. "Don't misinterpret me," he muttered, eyes averted, "but don't think this changes anything for you. I'm not easy." "But," his voice trailed off, and for once he didn't finish with sarcasm or annoyance. I smiled, leaning slightly closer. "I wouldn't have it any other way." Before we were separated by rescuers and sleds, our hands met again. Fingers intertwined, holding on as if neither of us wanted to let go. His grip was firm, reassuring, and I felt the tension of the past days settle into a quiet, intimate understanding. Then, almost instinctively, we leaned in. The kiss this time was different. Longer, more certain, full of all the stolen touches, lingering glances, and unspoken confessions from the cabin. It was a promise, a silent vow that whatever the world threw at us, we had discovered something worth holding on to. When we finally pulled back, the storm was gone, the sun glinting off the endless snow, but the warmth between us remained. Chapter 10: New Beginnings. Back on campus, everything felt different. The world was the same, but I wasn't. The storm had changed my perception of Antonio. I spent days replaying the events in my mind, questioning whether the intimacy we shared was real, or just a product of our isolation. I missed him. I missed the way he looked at me, the way he made me laugh, the way he made me feel. When he resumed, we met at our usual hostel entrance. The first words out of his mouth were gruff, as expected. "You survived the snowstorm," he said. "I did. Thanks to you," I replied, smiling. He raised an eyebrow. "Don't make it sound heroic. You'd have done fine without me." "Sure," I teased. "But then who would have kept me from freezing to death and being eaten by imaginary wolves?" His lips twitched, the closest thing to a smile I'd ever seen from him in public. He shook his head but didn't argue. That was enough. Classes resumed, students bustled, and the campus was alive again. We became close, a shared glance here, a subtle brush of shoulders there, a quiet conversation tucked between crowded hallways. One afternoon, I caught him by the library and offered him a cup of coffee. "Thanks," he said, voice low. The snowstorm had forced proximity, yes, but it had also shown us a connection that no chaos or cold could erase. Later, as we walked together back to our hostel, the sun dipping low in the sky, our shoulders touched. His hand brushed mine, and without thinking, I laced my fingers through his. He didn't pull away. "You know," he said quietly, "you're irritating in the best possible way." I laughed. "I'll take that as a compliment." He smirked faintly, a rare, real expression that reached his eyes. "You should." The campus was alive around us, filled with people, noise, and normalcy. Yet for the first time, the world felt small enough for just the two of us. The bond forged in a snowstorm through fear, frustration, and unexpected warmth had followed us back into reality. And as we walked side by side, hands intertwined, I knew this was only the beginning. The snowstorm had ended, but our story was just getting started. If you enjoyed this story, please like, comment where you are watching us from, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel for more interesting BL stories. Thanks for watching. See you next time.